If your insurance company is saying that they're not going to pay for the decking, even though they have ordinance and law coverage or law and ordinance coverage, building code upgrade coverage, building code coverage, whatever it is that they're calling their ordinance and law coverage, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. What matters is the reason that that decking has to be replaced. So for many policies today, there is something called anti-concurrent causation language. And with the anti-concurrent causation language, the insurance company is basically saying that they never, ever owe for anything that is caused by this, let's say that's rot, even if there is also a covered loss associated with it that came before, during, or after that. They never insure for rot. So if rot is the reason that the decking has to be replaced, or there's rotten areas in the decking, then they may not actually owe for that. You still have to have that as part of your scope of work because you are required to have a solid nailable surface to install the shingles to. But the carrier might not be the one picking up that tab. Now, in some states, they still should pay for it even with ordinance and law coverage, because ordinance and law coverage would also pay for compliance with code. And so it's an additional coverage. So they can use that additional coverage to pay for things that the coverage A doesn't cover. But not all ordinance and law is the same, and so they don't always pick up that difference. And so it's really going to come down to how that policy reads in the state that you're in. The best thing you can do, especially if you're a contractor, is to do a more thorough investigation so that you can prove that there is some other reason that the decking needs to be replaced. Because it comes down to what the reason is. If the reason falls under some anti-concurrent causation language, then you're going to have a hard time. And you probably won't end up getting it covered unless your state has some interesting case law that helps you out. But if you can find out that because of your attic inspection, there is no stamps on the underside of the decking that prove that the roof is built with roof-rated sheathing, then that lack of stamps means that it isn't to code and it would have to be brought up to code. And so you'd have to prove that. If you don't prove it, you're not going to get it. So prove it by providing the documentation showing that the stamps aren't there so you can't identify what the decking is and that it is a walkable surface for your workers. This is a requirement. So if it's not there and that's the reason it's being brought up to code, then that is something that wouldn't have an argument if they have ordinance and law coverage. But if your reason is that it's rotten, because rot often falls under anti-concurrent causation language, you're going to have some problems unless the ordinance and law language that you're dealing with pays for compliance with code as well, and case law in your area has interpreted it that way. So this is a policy argument. I would recommend you just prove that there are other reasons that the decking needs to be replaced. If you're dealing with a claim like this, you can't wait until the carrier makes that call and they decide it's because it's got rot or something on there, because now you're going to have to overcome some decision that was made, and getting managerial approval is a difficult thing. It's better to prove it up front, the reasons that the decking has to be replaced, and play offense instead of being reactionary and always having to fight against some decision that has been made. So just like everything else that we've been talking about, you need to prove it all up front before they come back with anything so that you can set the narrative correctly and actually get it paid for because there's actual coverage in the policy for it.